Witness brings up the president's youngest son. Did she cross the line? Terry Moran with the explosive testimony from the Hill tonight. President Trump on his way back this evening from his trip overseas, cutting the trip short, lashing out at the inquiry, and the other headline tonight, taking aim at Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. What Trudeau was caught on mic saying about President Trump. The breaking headline tonight involving thousands of U.S. troops. Are they being sent to the Middle East? And the new headline, a U.S. warship seizing Iranian missile parts at sea. Martha Raddatz standing by live tonight. The outrage mounting this evening, the new lawsuit filed by George Zimmerman, the man acquitted in the shooting death of Trayvon Martin, now suing Trayvon Martin's family for $100 million. What he's now claiming, and the family tonight says they're being victimized again. We're watching two new storms, one that could cross the country again. Rob times this out. The major news involving the Catholic Church tonight, the Vatican, and the investigation here in the U.S. The bishop out tonight, accused of a cover-up. And the health headline involving women and breast cancer, and concern over hair dyes and straighteners. Dr. Jen Ashton and what you need to know.
This is ABC World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a Wednesday night. And we begin tonight with the historic next step in the impeachment inquiry, and a very combative one that played out today on Capitol Hill. The heated proceedings in front of the House Judiciary Committee, the witnesses, constitutional law scholars, who were asked, was President Trump's conduct on Ukraine impeachable? 3 witnesses telling the committee yes, arguing the president abused his power for his own personal political gain. The Republican witness saying the Democrats don't have the evidence and that this is being rushed. And tonight, the unexpected moment when one of the witnesses brought up the president's youngest son to make a point. It was not well received by many, and tonight she's apologizing. President Trump, meanwhile, flying back to Washington tonight and lashing out. This evening, what we've learned, the president's team already looking ahead to what they want in a Senate trial. Terry Moran leads us off from the Hill tonight.
It was a highly partisan and dramatic day, the first high-stakes hearing in the Judiciary Committee featuring constitutional scholars. And the issue before the panel, does the evidence show that what President Trump did on Ukraine rises to the level of an impeachable offense?
The president has shown us his pattern of conduct. If we do not act to hold him in check now, President Trump will almost certainly try again to solicit interference in the election for his personal political gain.
But this is not an impeachment. This is just a simple railroad job. And today's is a waste of time.
Right out of the gate, 3 out of the 4 scholars, the ones chosen by Democrats, testified that the president should be impeached.
And I just want to stress that if what we're talking about is not impeachable, then nothing is impeachable.
If we cannot impeach a president who abuses his office for personal advantage, we no longer live in a democracy. That's why the framers created the possibility of impeachment.
The very idea that a president might seek the aid of a foreign government in his re-election campaign would have horrified them. But based on the evidentiary record, that is what President Trump has done.
Stanford law professor Pamela Karlan said the president's alleged actions, withholding nearly $400 million in U.S. aid approved by Congress simply for personal political gain, has never happened before.
The evidence reveals a president who used the powers of his office to demand that a foreign government participate in undermining a competing candidate for the presidency.
Karlan said over the Thanksgiving holiday she read every witness transcript, and she pointed out what she found most troubling.
And the most chilling line for me of the entire process was the following. Ambassador Sondland said he had to announce the investigations. He's talking about President Zelensky. He had to announce the investigations. He didn't actually have to do them, as I understood it. And then he said, I never heard, Mr. Goldman, anyone say that the investigations had to start or had to be completed. The only thing I heard from Mr. Giuliani or otherwise was they had to be announced in some form. And what I took that to mean was this was not about whether Vice President Biden actually committed corruption or not. This was about injuring somebody who the president thinks of as a particularly hard opponent.
But law professor Jonathan Turley, called by Republicans, said he did not vote for Trump, but he is still troubled by the Democrats' impeachment inquiry in an agitated time in our country.
I get it. You're mad. The president's mad. My Republican friends are mad. My Democratic friends are mad. My wife is mad. My kids are mad. Even my dog seems mad.
He said Democrats don't have the evidence they need.
There's a difference between requesting investigations and a quid pro quo. You need to stick the landing on the quid pro quo. You need to get the evidence to support it. It might be out there, I don't know, but it's not in this record.
And he added the Democrats are rushing this.
It's a perfect storm. You set an incredibly short period, demand a huge amount of information, and when the president goes to court, you then impeach him. In Nixon, it did go to the courts, and Nixon lost. And that was the reason Nixon resigned.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi urging House Democrats, quote, "Are you ready?" While Vice President Mike Pence rallying Republicans to turn up the heat on the Democrats. And back in that hearing room, Republicans were furious when one of those law professors argued that the Constitution does not make Trump a king, driving the point home with a quip about the president's son.
So while the president can name his son Barron, he can't make him a baron.
When you invoke the president's son's name here, when you try to make a little joke out of referencing Barron Trump, that does not lend credibility to your argument. It makes you look mean. It makes you look like you're attacking someone's family, the minor child of the President of the United States. So let's see if we can get into the facts. To all of the witnesses, if you have personal knowledge of a single material fact in the Schiff report, please raise your hand. And let the record reflect no personal knowledge of a single fact.
So after that moment today, let's get right to Terry Moran tonight. He's live on the Hill. And Terry, first, the apology just in tonight from that law scholar who brought up the president's youngest son.
That's right. Stanford law professor Pamela Karlan at the end of the hearing said this: "I want to apologize for what I said earlier about the president's son. It was wrong of me to do that. I wish the president would apologize, obviously, for the things that he's done that are wrong, but I do regret having said that."
In the meantime, Terry, where does this go from here? It seems to be moving very quickly. And news tonight from the president's legal team suggesting they believe a Senate trial is a certainty. And what do they want to see in a trial?
Well, the president is a tough litigator, and he's planning a scorched earth defense. They want a full Senate trial, including the president wants the ability to call witnesses, perhaps live in the Senate chamber itself. He wants the Republican leadership has already blocked out the entire month of January. This is essentially a way, and no one should be surprised, of the president using the trial to put his accusers on trial. David?
Terry Moran leading us off again tonight. Terry, thank you. And President Trump, meanwhile, returning to the White House tonight, lashing out at the inquiry and returning home from the NATO summit, where he took aim today at Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau after what Trudeau was caught saying on mic about President Trump. ABC's chief White House correspondent Jonathan Karl traveling with the president.
President Trump was outside of London meeting with NATO leaders as today's impeachment hearings got underway. Thousands of miles away, but paying close attention to what was happening on Capitol Hill.
But think of it. They get 3 constitutional lawyers and we get 1. What's that all about? It is the most unfair thing that anybody's ever seen. Now, I don't think too many people are going to watch because it's going to be boring, all right?
The president was also paying attention to this, a video clip from a reception last night in Buckingham Palace where several leaders, including British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, French President Emmanuel Macron, and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, can be heard apparently laughing about how President Trump threw off their schedule by talking to the press for so long during their meetings. And Trudeau described the reaction from President Trump's advisors when he unexpectedly announced that next year's G7 meeting will be at Camp David. This morning, Trudeau acknowledged the leaders were talking about President Trump.
Last night, I made a reference to the fact that there was an unscheduled press conference before my meeting with President Trump, and I was happy to take part of it, but it was certainly notable.
After the video clip went viral, the president was asked about it and took a shot at Trudeau.
Did you have a video of Prime Minister Trudeau talking about you last night?
Well, he's two-faced. And honestly, with Trudeau, he's a nice guy. I find him to be a very nice guy. But, you know, the truth is that I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2%, and I guess he's not very happy about it.
A short while later, President Trump was overheard boasting about what he called Trudeau.
That was funny when I said the guy's two-faced, you know.
All right, so let's get to John Carl with us live from London again tonight. And John, we took note today that the president was supposed to hold one final press conference before he left the UK, but that was abruptly canceled.
It sure caught us by surprise, David. The press conference was on the schedule. This traveling press was there waiting for it to begin when the president suddenly canceled it and decided to fly back to Washington. Instead, one factor may be that he had already taken many questions from the press over the past 2 days. David.
All right, safe trip home tonight, John. Thank you. And we are following another developing headline tonight involving potentially thousands of U.S. troops. Will they be sent to the Middle East? And this comes amid news tonight. A U.S. Navy destroyer seized Iranian weapons and missile parts in the Arabian Sea headed for Yemen. ABC's chief global affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz and what she's learned tonight.
Tonight, with Pentagon officials seeing new indications that Iran could be preparing for more aggressive action, the U.S. is considering another significant increase in American forces in the region. A U.S. official tells ABC News that thousands more Americans could be sent to the Mideast, although no decision has yet been made. The U.S. began increasing troops in May after what the U.S. said was an imminent threat from Iran to American interests and forces in the region. That was followed by what were said to be Iranian attacks on Saudi oil facilities, commercial oil tankers, and a sophisticated U.S. drone. Some 14,000 U.S. troops, a bomber group, Patriot missile batteries, and an aircraft carrier were eventually sent to the region in response.
And Martha Raddatz with us live tonight as well. And Martha, your sources are telling you that this decision on whether to send more troops to the region could actually be made before the end of the year?
It could, David. It could come within weeks because the U.S. says the threat from Iran is not going away and is only increasing given the protests that have been taking place within Iran. David?
Martha Raddatz with us from Washington. Thank you, Martha. And there is growing outrage tonight over a new lawsuit filed by George Zimmerman, the man who shot and killed unarmed teenager Trayvon Martin, but was acquitted. Zimmerman is now suing Trayvon Martin's family and others for $100 million. What does he claim? And the family tonight saying he is victimizing them again. Here's Steve Osunsami.
Not guilty.
He was acquitted of killing an unarmed black teenager in a shooting many argued was racially motivated. And tonight, George Zimmerman and his lawyer are suing Trayvon Martin's family, their attorney, state police, and former state prosecutors, making the unsubstantiated claim that one of the witnesses at Zimmerman's 2013 trial was a fake. In a lawsuit filed in Florida today, they paint a grand conspiracy and are asking for $100 million, arguing that the young woman who testified that she was on the phone with Trayvon Martin as he was being killed was a fraud, coached by prosecutors and Martin's family.
He said, "Why are you following me for?" And then I heard a hard-breathed man come and say, "What you doing around here?"
The lawyer filing the lawsuit has a long history of suing black lawmakers and pushing conspiracy theories. Larry Klayman once submitted a petition to deport President Obama. His legal tactics have gotten him sanctions and bans from some courtrooms. George Zimmerman hasn't rested since the trial, selling Confederate artwork to raise money for a supposed Muslim-free gun shop, and even selling the gun he used to kill Trayvon Martin. The timing of the lawsuit is curious.
Where I got to know George Zimmerman.
It comes as Zimmerman is promoting a new movie on these new allegations. Trayvon Martin's family tonight says once again they feel victimized. Their lawyer is calling this another failed attempt to defend the indefensible and a shameless attempt to profit off the lives and grief of others. David?
All right, Steve, thank you. Next tonight, we're watching two new storms, one storm hitting right now and a second one that could cross the country again this week. In this image tonight, a truck driver losing control on a slippery highway. This is in East LA. The big rig partially hanging over that overpass. So let's get right to Rob Marciano on both storms tonight. Hey, Rob.
Hi, David. Been a tough day in California, and it's not over yet. Not much of a break before the next one. Have a look. The core of the low and the cold front has not pushed through yet. It's been a high snow level event, so still some heavy rain across Southern California. It does push inland. This next storm has really developed in the last 12 hours, it's growing bigger. It's going to affect the entire West Coast, Portland, Seattle, getting into Northern California. That's where the heaviest rain and wind will be Friday into Saturday. Could see 1 to 3 feet of snow in the mountains above 5,000 feet. We got some lake effect snows here on the East Coast, but this is nothing compared to what could come